This is the first part, at least I'm making it the first part of the closet scene. By the closet scene, we mean the part of the play where Hamlet confronts his mother, the Queen. Um, it is an intimate space, and it is a place where Hamlet can reveal intimate thoughts. For that reason, it's tempting, and for quite a while, I'm going to follow this temptation. I'm going to yield to it. It's quite tempting to see this scene as all about Hamlet and his preoccupations. Just to outline those preoccupations as they occur in the play, and particularly in this scene, they are his contempt for the world, his contemptus mundi, that is, his apprehensions, as in his ability to apprehend the next world, perhaps based on the fact that this one is a stale promontory, and most particularly and quite markedly in this scene, in this confrontation, his feelings of disgust towards his mother. Now, I've said that this scene is all about Hamlet. At least I've been tempted to, but I also think that we should look at Gertrude herself. Now, if one is asked about women in this play, a common, understandable, and probably correct response is that women, the two main women, Gertrude and Ophelia, are more the victims of the action than people who propel it. They don't have agency. They are very important plot motors, Ophelia to inspire Laertes' revenge and to spy on Hamlet in a way, and Gertrude to occasion the disgust. But they don't completely make things happen. We'll look at that more at the end of this scene, where Hamlet does make a demand of Gertrude, which she does observe. She does do things as a result of this scene. But generally, you can, if you want, see women, Gertrude and Ophelia, as passive parties here. And particularly when you see the way in which Polonius mansplains to the Queen, and then so does Hamlet in a more brutal, aggressive way. You really see that. A couple of remarks, though, about Gertrude's particular role. First of all, A.C. Bradley, looking around for reasons why Hamlet delays so much and looking at Hamlet's cast of mind, does reach the conclusion that Gertrude is responsible for all of Hamlet's melancholy. Now, another scholar, T.S. Eliot, who wrote an essay about Hamlet and his problems, thought that Shakespeare had failed as a writer because he makes Gertrude too big a cause of Hamlet's grief. Eliot wrote that Hamlet, the play, is dominated by an emotion which is in excess of the facts as they appear. What's quite funny about that is the way that the great poet T.S. Eliot decides that Shakespeare doesn't understand Hamlet well enough, or indeed how to write a play. He is, in fact, just in passing, a useful critic to bring in so that you can disagree with him. Another reading, and this is a historical context type reading, another reading of Gertrude, though, is a way in which she may well have represented for an Elizabethan audience in the Globe in 1601, may well have represented Elizabeth I herself, as in a kind of affront to nature. If you were not pro-Elizabeth, you did actually think that this queen should not have existed, that England should not be a Protestant country, that Henry VIII should only have had children by his first wife, the Catholic Catherine of Aragon, that Mary Tudor was a rightful queen and Elizabeth was not, and that in the absence of any succession or of any heirs, being run by a queen at all, and particularly this one, was a kind of affront to the smooth running of a state. And that view is explored by a critic called Tennenhaus, and you can attribute it to him. It's a new historicist reading. That is to say, when you really dig deep into what an Elizabethan audience would have thought, they may have shared some element of Hamlet's disgust at his mother. those remarks are kind of prefatory to the whole discussion of the other parts of the closet scene. But let's look more specifically at this one. This is the moment when Hamlet will kill Polonius and confront his mother. Interesting that the whole tenor of this moment is that Hamlet seems much more preoccupied with his hatred of his mother's crimes than he is to have killed a whole human being, even the wrong one. Now, here though is Polonius setting up the scene, hiding behind the arras and explaining exactly how to treat Hamlet. Tell him his pranks have been too broad to bear with, actually bollock him, get on his case. And the problem here is, the extraordinary thing here is it's exactly the kind of spy mastering that he has managed to do on his own son. He has ideas and tips on exactly how to elicit information out of people, and quite often they work. So Polonius, had he survived, would have got some really juicy information based on exactly the techniques that he would have prescribed. Moral of the story being, don't take Polonius to be such a twit as he looks. Now, Hamlet bursts in quite forcefully. You can hear how mother, what's the matter? There's an accusatory question. What's the matter? Not being only what's up with you, but what is the occasion for speaking to you? What do you want from me? There's a historical echo here of the Earl of Essex, who managed to get into Elizabeth I's bedchamber to confront her about her response to his dealing with the reconquering of Ireland. Anyway, look at this exchange. Hamlet, thou hast thy father much offended. Direct, bald on record, declarative sentence. Thou has that kind of intimacy. But look at the way, rhythmically and verbally, Hamlet picks up on it. He's pretty much, that's what you are, what am I? Mother, you have my father much offended. Now, this is called Sticomythia, and you don't often get chances to talk about it in this play, but this is exactly it. Sticomythia is when two characters are talking and they answer each other in lines of exactly the same length and stress and rhythm and that kind of thing. This is very strictly Sticomythia. Hamlet, though, is doing one of those things that he does best, which is to take his interlocutor's words, to take the words of the person he's talking to, and to throw them straight back at them, sometimes to change their meaning. Thou hast thy father much offended, says the queen, meaning Claudius, the king. But Hamlet says, mother, you have my father much offended. It sounds like it's parroting, but when you realize, as you do, that thy father and my father are two different people, my father Hamlet, they're talking about old Hamlet, you realize how defensive he's being. And this doesn't stop either. Come, you answer with an idle tongue. And Hamlet straight back, same register, same language, same rhythm, go, you question with a wicked tongue. Now, quite often when you hear Hamlet speak, he slips into the rhythms and the diction of the people to whom he's speaking. He starts mimicking them. Here he does it with Gertrude. It's almost his instinct, but there's something else going on here. It's highly charged, and there's a kind of desperate, ruthless cleverness about it that you can't really shake. You can hear the panic now in, why, how now, Hamlet? What's the matter now? As if the problem, Hamlet identifying that the problem may have shifted, and the Queen sounding flummoxed. These are barely words. Why, how now, Hamlet? Have you forgot me as in who I am? Can you not speak to me respectfully? No, by the cross. And then says, you are the Queen, your husband's brother's wife. And denies that, and wishes that he weren't, wishes that she weren't his mother. On other occasions, he's almost blamed his mother, like in the nunnery scene, when he says, would that my mother had not borne me, as if blaming his mother for his own very existence. Bear in mind as well that the Queen is talking to somebody she assumes is mad. It takes the end of this scene for Hamlet to say, "I am but mad in craft." And whether or not we believe him, it's Gertrude's impression of him that begins to matter to us. She begins to fear for her life, and that the whole dialogue, if you can even call it that, falls into shrieks very rapidly. "Help, ho, what ho, help." And at this point, Hamlet, detecting a stir in the arras behind the curtain, the arras curtain, stabs Polonius. Now, the big take home from this, the kind of thesis statement you can adopt for the rest of this scene, the rest of this bit anyway, is how carefree Hamlet seems to be of killing a king. Killing Polonius. I slipped up there by saying killing a king because when Hamlet does kill Polonius, he's almost hacked off that he hasn't killed somebody as more important. "I took thee for thy better." Quite odd that Hamlet says, "I took thee for thy better," meaning I thought you were the king, because as far as Hamlet's concerned, the king is the worst person imaginable. You could, if you wanted, really work that word better, because it's better in the kind of rank sense, as in social status, as in the machinery of the court, not better as in a better human being. And you could almost think here that by calling the king Polonius is better, he's buying into the corruption of the court. And some scholars, such as Rhodri Lewis, think that Hamlet is himself completely compromised by the corruption around him. The Queen is appalled by this, but Hamlet goes straight on to compare his deed with the act of adultery, because he then goes on to say, "Sit you down and let me wring your heart, for so I shall if it be made of penetrable stuff, if I can even get through to you. If damned custom have not brassed it, so if the persistence with which you have slept with Claudius has not completely compromised it, that it be proof and bullock against sense, that you'll be, unless you become so inured to reason and morality that you're completely defended against my words." Now, I just want to look in some detail at a particular part of Hamlet's speech, and that's the end of it. It's this particular part here. But we'll come to that in a moment. Look at the list, the charges with which he contrasts the purity of some precious things in the world with her vices. But then the last few lines put that into quite alarming context. You'll see what I mean in a moment. Hamlet complains that he's done such an act, and he doesn't name it. He just does it by images that blurs the grace and blush of modesty, calls virtue hypocrite. And then look at the way he takes innocent, fresh, unblemished images, takes off the rose from the fair, a word that he's used to describe Ophelia at times, or fairness, not just beauty, but also morality, from the fair forehead of an innocent love, and sets a blister there, so that you've got the hideous contrast of roses and blisters, how things should look, particularly faces, and how they end up looking. And then he gets clearer, makes marriage vows look false as dice as oaths. And then he talks about how religion, sweet religion, contrasts with a physical body. "Oh, such a deed as from the body of contraction plucks the very soul. And sweet religion makes a rhapsody of word. It makes actual faith in the next world and God seem like just singing and beautiful music and noise without any meaning." And the last thing I want to notice in this extract is this: "Heaven's face does glow o'er this solidity and compound mass." Now, heaven here, this solidity and compound mass, can be the world, the planet, and heaven looks down on it with heated visage. You're making God angry, as against the doom. and heaven is thought sick at the act. Now that idea of doom can play into the idea of the fin de siècle, the idea that if you get to the end of a century, you're looking at some catastrophic, as in turning the world upside down, change. And heaven appears to be judging us. The next world seems to be watching the mess we're making of this one. And this can be seen as confirming that point that we attributed to A.C. Bradley, that Hamlet, in contemplating his mother, is now thinking that the whole world is sick. And if you were looking at the whole world from heaven, from another place, you would be disgusted not only at the state of the world in general, but by Gertrude in particular.